Previously on No Reserves Radio.
Oh my God, Angelo! Come on, have some self-respect. The Eagles can't hurt you if you don't constantly pander to them.
Here's the biggest indictment of Dame that I can say. Dame has been so off this year that Rehn went on live air and said Jalen Brunson deserved an all-star start over him.
You are now Angelo Didululo.
Do you think it is possible that the management of the Memphis Grizzlies are just buying into the reckless youth movement and they got rid of the one person in the locker room that probably was telling Ja to knock it off?
Because he's taken advantage of me multiple times when I was younger. That sounded bad. Holy shit.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you're correct in that assessment.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to No Reserves Radio. I'm your host, Rehn. With me, as always, Angelo. A bit of a special episode tonight. NBA Finals start tonight, and I don't know exactly when this episode will release. Hopefully, we get it out before.
Right.
It'll be tonight. You'll know when it comes out, but I guess it's kind of irrelevant for me to say when it's going to come out because you're listening to it live. Well, not live. Past tense live. It's live as we're recording it. That's what I mean by that. So this is a great intro. And then we'll be back on Sunday with a regularly scheduled episode. You'll notice we missed last week, okay? And you'll notice it's just Angelo and I. What you're saying, okay, Austin's never there. But this time he actually has an excuse. So we had he has an excuse this time. It's a legitimate excuse. He'll be back on, I think, the 17th, but he's currently on vacation. He did come up to Angelo and I's neck of the woods. We had a little No Reserves gathering. The plan originally was to record a live episode together in the same room because, spoiler alert, we are not in the same area right now, so we record through a lobby. It's fine. That was the plan. Weather kind of interfered, changed a couple things, so we ended up having to move things around to make it all work, and unfortunately we were not able to record that episode, so you did not get an episode this Sunday. We're justifying that by saying we had nothing to talk about in the sphere of the NBA. That's all changing as of today, as the NBA Finals are set to tip off tonight. I think, is it an 8 o'clock tip off or 8:30?
Well, I can Google that right now. Mavericks versus 8:30. 8:30.
Yeah. Let's aim for an 8 o'clock release. That would be dope.
Okay, let's do that.
There's a bit to talk about, I guess, prior to getting to the NBA Finals discussion. We've got to talk about the losers of the conference finals, and what we think the future holds for them. And then it's Rehn and Angelo. You were gonna go off the rails at some point about something completely irrelevant.
What if this episode for the special we stay on topic the whole time?
I mean, I'm fine committing to that, and I know you're fine committing to that. The question is, can we actually do that?
No, not at all.
Exactly.
It was a nice thought. It's
a great thought, but it's not actually gonna work out, so we're not gonna do it. Let's go ahead and start with the least playoff relevant thing to talk about, which is the Los Angeles Lakers and their search for a head coach. For a while, I know it seemed like JJ Redick was the favorite, and what's your opinion on JJ Redick as a head coach? Like, the idea behind it.
I like it a lot, honestly.
I think that he's got a great mind for the game, but if you would ask me that about Steve Nash, I would have said the exact same thing, and we have seen Steve Nash has not necessarily translated that to a coaching role. That said, I think JJ Redick, I don't think JJ Redick was less talented than Steve Nash, and I think that there is an argument.
Kind of the thing. I got a story from the weekend. So, my family, at least part of them, they do coaching. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They actually coached me in softball. They're currently doing. I'm not going to give out the grade, but they're doing coaching volleyball at a below high school level. I'll just say that. They got offered the chance to move up. And they accepted it, and they said that they didn't necessarily regret it, but they wish they hadn't have done it. And the reason they wish they had not done it was because they liked that moment where like they were teaching basics and like the light bulb moment hits and you finally like understand things and you can just see it in their eyes. This is what they said. You
Yeah.
can just see the moment they like everything clicks and the things that I've been taught are finally translating to things that I can do on the court. Coaching can be the same way. You can be someone who's better at coaching lower levels of play, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad coach. The thing is, being an NBA coach is as much about managing egos and developing younger players and navigating the landscape that is the world as much as it is knowing the X's and O's. And that's the problem. Because it's kind of hard to do both. You can
Yeah.
say, like, yeah, set an off ball, let the guy do a swing to the wing and then shoot the shot, and then the guy hit the shot, but sometimes it doesn't always work like that. So maybe the center doesn't want to be setting that screen for that shooter. Maybe he thinks his talents are best utilized elsewhere. It's
So like, did
yeah,
you? I don't know how much you listen to like NBA podcasts.
on and off. I listen to it on
So
and off.
Jeff Teague last week was talking
Oh,
about, yeah, Jeff Teague, um, a story related to his time with the Pacers,
hmm
and he was talking about an anecdote where CJ Miles took the last shot of the game, right, and he ended up missing
okay.
it, and the Pacers ended up losing that
CJ
game, and then Paul George in the press
For those of you
conference.
that don't know, CJ Miles was basically a journeyman role player for the Pacers for most of his career.
Not most of his career. He finished his career. Not finished his career, but like he was only with the Pacers for 2 or 3 years,
Really, it felt
and
like longer.
like
Anyway, go
he solid to good shooter. Like he was a quality NBA player. Like he was a journeyman starter. Like Angelo's kind of
ahead.
underselling him if you don't like.
No, I'm
CJ
not.
Miles was not. Okay, you know what? We're gonna first
I
first segue of the. I was in the middle of actually having a conversation, and we gotta go back. So CJ Miles played 849 games, started in 303. That sounds like a journeyman starter to me. He had seasons where he was averaging 14 points a game, 13 points a game. He also had seasons where he was averaging 2.7 points per game. So he was kind of all over the board. That was at the end of his career. He played a grand total of 3 seasons out of his career. How many years did he actually play? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He played 16 years in the NBA. He played 3 seasons on the Pacers. He was not a player that played most of his career in Indiana. Angelo's a
couldn't tell
casual.
you. I couldn't tell you another team CJ Miles played for.
And
I'm
this is
just
how
I'm
you
just
know
telling
he's
you
a
right now.
casual because
I'm just telling you right now. I'm
he
just telling
played
you right now.
he played 3 seasons or 2 seasons for the Cleveland Cavaliers starting in
Yep.
34 games. He averaged 11.2 points.
Sure.
You're just a
Absolutely.
casual. You're admitting it. So anyway, CJ Miles takes the last shot, misses it. Paul George in the post-game press conference with the media is basically saying, I'm the big name player here. I should be taking this shot.
Who said
This is
this?
my team. Paul George.
Okay, Paul George. Hey, go on, second.
So I don't think it was the very next game, but it was like a game later. Same situation. Need the final shot to win or tie it. Paul George takes the shot. Airball. So in the locker room after the game, CJ Miles leans over to Jeff Teague and he holds out his phone. And do you remember there was the Paul George commercial for Gatorade where like he's dribbling around and he shoots the shot at the buzzer and makes it?
Yeah.
So Miles had edited that video with
Airball.
that
Oh,
clip.
no.
So it's the buzzer, and then he airballs it. And so, long way of saying, like, as a coach, your job is to, as you said, in the NBA, at least with your superstar players, is to manage their egos, because sometimes, it's. I think LeBron has gotten way better at this in his career, because there was the time last season when D'Angelo Russell was absolutely cooking, and like he deferred off to LeBron, and you could see LeBron get visibly upset and throw the ball back to D'Angelo Russell, like, you're taking over this game.
Yep.
I think when you're talking about an NBA coach, especially with those young superstar talents, and players that come to mind would be like John Morant, Anthony Edwards, those young uber talented players that haven't yet realized that you don't win as much if you have that big of an ego. Like, you have to be willing to make the right play for your team. Sometimes that's not you taking the last shot. Sometimes that's you passing to Ray Allen in the corner to make sure you make it to the NBA Finals.
Win the NBA Finals.
That was to make the NBA Finals, wasn't it? Wasn't the Ray Allen shot to get them?
No, that was in the finals.
Was that in the finals? That was a long time ago.
That was to push Game 7, buddy.
Okay, well, to secure that Game 7, sometimes you gotta be willing to defer. Like, you're not gonna take every shot. Coaching NBA players is probably the toughest pro sport to coach, because it's a lot more personal, because there's less players than in football, and any position can dominate, whereas in the NFL, like, obviously all those positions are important. I'm not saying those positions are not important, but none of them are as important as the quarterback. So you kind of have to have a give and take with your quarterback, whereas in the NBA, you have to be able to coach those egos. Do you think JJ Redick would have been able to? Because we haven't talked about it yet, but it seems like the coaching search is over, at least through all reports, and these are from people like Shams and Woj, so they're likely legitimate. But speaking about JJ Redick in particular, because he's a former NBA player who played a long time, seems to have a really good mind for the game. He does have some, in my opinion, questionable takes on his podcast, but then he turned into a podcaster, an ESPN analyst. Do you think he has the wherewithal to coach those types of players? Because if you want to compete, you have to have those types of players on your team, and you have to know how to deal with them. Because some players you have to be screaming in their face. Some players you have to be more, good job, let's try again next time.
I think JJ understands this. Because I understand that we associate JJ with. He was a starter his whole career, but we don't associate him with superstardom.
Oh, absolutely
JJ,
not.
I think JJ understands that stuff a lot better than we give him credit for the simple fact that he came from Duke. He came into the NBA as one of the most hated players in the NBA. So I think he understands like navigating the media and managing egos a lot better than we give him credit for. Now, I don't know this. Obviously, we haven't seen him do it, but I think he would be a very good coach.
Now let's rewind, just for the sense of being devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Would you have said the same thing about Steve Nash? Or do you think because Steve Nash was a superstar, like, it's an issue of, which, full disclosure, I think it's a fair take. I think it's a fair take to say someone that's a two-time MVP doesn't have the same understanding of the X's and O's that someone that is a role player that has to understand them. Like, sometimes those MVPs or those MVP caliber players are just so good at the game, they don't even think about it. And
Right.
they can't conceptualize
Well,
the
listen.
thinking that another player has to do.
Oh, absolutely. Let's go back to, like I've always said, my parents are the coaches. I'm just the dude who's good at stuff. So so
That's fair.
but at the same time, JJ was good. JJ was never viewed as star, and it seems like those players are better as coaches than someone who is a two-time MVP. Just because he had to navigate that. He had to and this is weird saying this about someone who's historically known for passing, but he had to he had to care just about himself for so long. So it's kind of hard to get out of that mindset sometimes.
That's fair. So we've been hinting at it. JJ is
Did you see?
apparently.
Speaking of which, you know what? Fuck it. I'm first real.
All right, we're going
Did
off the
you
rails.
see? Did you see Draymond and Shaq's?
Oh my god, I was actually
segment
going to talk
together?
about that. I was going to talk about that. Let's get through. Let's get through the Lakers,
Okay.
and then we're going to talk about because I was going to have that while we were talking about the Timberwolves.
Draymond and Shaq talking about who would have won in their era's teams. Anyway, go on.
I didn't see that specifically, but I want to talk about the NBA and specifically TNT having that decision to have Draymond on covering the Timberwolves and like how terrible of an idea that was. But we'll get to that when we talk about the Timberwolves. I want to finish talking about the Lakers. So
Fair.
so JJ Redick, according to sources familiar with the team, aka I'm reading Woj's tweets right now. Los Angeles Lakers are targeting Connecticut's UConn, the last two national championship winning teams. Dan Hurley to become the franchise's next coach and are preparing a massive long-term contract offer to bring back the back-to-back national champion to the NBA. So a couple things. Well, let me clear a couple things first. So Dan Hurley currently is being paid $5 million per year from UConn. He actually just signed an extension through 2029. Why did I say it like that? That was really weird. I don't know. My brain just thought that sounded better, so I said it. Deal with it. In order for him to sign this contract with the Lakers, whatever it may be, there's going to be a $1.38 million buyout, which wow.
That's pennies compared to what
That's
he's going to
pennies.
get with the
So to compare, like Monty Williams just led a 14-win Pistons team, and he was paid like $13.9 million per year. So I'm expecting Dan Hurley's going to get a pretty hefty contract, probably more in the Steve Kerr range than the Monty Williams range, which is I think like 9.7. So I would expect like a $10 million a year contract, because the Lakers are desperately in need of a leadership change. They are preparing for a world without LeBron James, as is the rest of the league. Dan Hurley is a coach that seems very, very accomplished in terms of coaching young men, which is typically what happens when you go through a rebuild, and getting blood from a stone from role players. So I personally like it. I would like to hear your hot take, however.
This is a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea. Why is it a terrible
It's an
idea?
absolutely atrociously terrible idea. Because
Why?
Because this is the Lakers we're talking about. The Lakers fan base are not exactly the most patient of bunch. And if you're saying you're going to lock this dude up long term, he can be a great coach, he can develop players. The Lakers fans don't give a fuck. The Lakers don't want to wait 4 years while this guy develops college level and Euro players to be good. He'll have 2 bad seasons and then that'll be it. And they'll be calling for his head. I do not think you have to understand who you are. And if you're a Lakers fan, you understand this is who you are on the inside. You just want to win.
Attacking a
Tell
whole
me
fan
I'm
base.
wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. These motherfuckers will not show up to these games unless the Lakers are a competitive team.
I don't agree with that. I think that they're going to show up anyway. They'll boo, but they'll show up
Very
anyway.
loudly.
It's like the Knicks were bad for so long, and MSG was still sold out.
But the Knicks are used to mediocrity. The Lakers
Jesus
are not.
Christ.
What?
Just attacking two of the largest markets in the NBA. That's
Come at me.
so on brand.
Come at me. But tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that the Lakers don't strike you as the organization to fire a head coach after 2 years into a rebuild after they failed to win more than 50 games.
Here's the thing, though, about the Lakers. So I think a rebuild for LA is always going to be short. It's needed, but it's always going to be short. And here's why. You take one bad season, you get a good lottery pick, right? Next season, you
Listen,
go all in on free agency, and whatever the superstar free agent is, they're already enticed to come to LA because it's LA. Where are all the attractive young actresses? It's in LA. So, like, I don't like LA is such an attractive free agent destination that they're always going to be able to make those big pulls. I don't think a rebuild is going to necessarily be a long thing, but I think for those young players, it's going to be beneficial to have Dan Hurley in that locker room.
And I agree with that.
Now, the question is, because Dan Hurley is, as Woj says, literally the most sought after coach in all of basketball. Like, you don't, like, it's not a fluke that he just won back-to-back national titles, and he probably would have won 3 in a row if not for Rudy Gobert. The question is, how is he going to handle coaching a 30-year-old veteran that knows more than him? Because there are players that know more than their coaches. Like, if you're coaching LeBron James...
So, I'm telling you, there is a high... They are either drafting Bronny James and they are bringing the student to help develop Bronny James, or LeBron James is not in LA.
I think that's
the tip off.
possible. I do think that part is possible because
that's the only way. That's the only way I can see LeBron completely on board with this.
But that's the thing. That's what I was about to say. So McMenamin tweeted today that LeBron James has not had any conversation with the Lakers about Dan Hurley or JJ Redick or the coaching search in general.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Which, that's so off-brand for LeBron.
It's very much...
Even if he doesn't care who it is, he's normally involved. And with him not being involved, I do think there is truth to he's testing free agency, which is completely fair. Like, he wants to go out on a high note, or he wants to go out on a last dance tour. Either are completely fair. Which he deserves,
by the way.
What does he have left to prove in the NBA? So, like, you know, go to Cleveland. Maybe you win a championship, maybe you don't, but you end it in Cleveland. That's a cool story. You already won. You won a lot. Just... I wouldn't hold it against him if he went back. I would hold it against him if he went back to Miami, because that clusterfuck of the decision still haunts us to this day. But time will tell. But it is very odd for him to not be involved in some capacity in the discussions, unless he's already made his mind up that he's not coming out. And let's be honest, LeBron James knows where he's playing basketball next season.
Yeah.
It is a dog and pony show right now. This is for the media. Because you think LeBron, like, even with the decision, like, when you go back and watch that, what should I do? He already knew what he was doing. It's LeBron James.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? Like,
yep.
So LeBron James knows where he's playing next year, and he's probably already talked to that team, and it wouldn't matter if that leaked out because it's LeBron James. And what are they going to do? Ban LeBron James for collusion? It's not going to happen. He's going to be an owner in the NBA in probably 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
So, I don't know. But regardless, I think that it's exciting. I think that even if he fails in LA because the fans, as you put it, I think this is a good step for him because I do think he deserves an NBA coaching job. I think he's an excellent coach. I have very limited experience when it comes to college basketball. I do only watch March Madness. But in everything I saw of him, he seemed to be making good adjustments. He seemed to have the attention of his players, which is the important part, because how often in the NBA do you see timeout whistles where the coach is talking to a couple players and then the rest of the team is off doing their own thing, and it's like, well, what's the point then? Like, I think coaching, you have to be able to have that charisma to draw all those players to you and make them want to play for you. I think that's the most important skill of a coach, is being able to pull a team together and make them play for each other. And it seems like Dan Hurley is very good at that. So regardless, I think he will be an NBA coach for the foreseeable future, whether that's in LA or not. But I do think he will get a longer leash than 2 years for the post-LeBron era, regardless of what happens this offseason. Do we have anything else to talk about on the Lakers?
they're about to be a very tragic organization for a season or two.
Potentially.
Oh,
I
they
mean, maybe not next year, but the year after for sure.
Do you think if
We'll see.
LeBron leaves, they just immediately trade AD? Or do you think they try to make it work for a year, see what they
I think
got, and then
you try to make it work at least until the deadline.
Yeah, I can see that.
Speaking of LeBron James, this isn't necessarily like Delonte West got arrested again.
Who?
Delonte West.
Delonte West. Okay.
Yeah. He mugshot. He does not look good.
As one.
It's rough. In 2020, Mark Cuban actually found him on the street and picked him up and took him to rehab.
Oh god.
Which shout out to Mark Cuban for just like seeing someone on the street and being like, oh, that's Delonte West, and then like checking them into rehab, getting them resources they needed. But then he apparently got clean, and now he's relapsed, and he was found unresponsive, and they took him to the hospital, and now he
It's terrible.
So, okay, hold on. The rest of the story gets worse. I just read all of it. Thursday morning, 40-year-old West was reportedly arrested in D.C. after collapsing while hiding from police. That is all the details we know. We'll see. The mugshot is really sad. Yeah. Don't look that up if you're having a good day. It's really depressing.
Indeed.
Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, one of the richest people in the world, has agreed to join Marco and Alex Rodriguez ownership group to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota Lynx.
Wait, Alex Rodriguez is about to own the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Have you not been following this?
No, I have not. Oh Lord.
It's kind of crazy to think about because if you've been following the story since like it started, which it started last year, every time you hear something about this, something crazier has happened, and now Michael Bloomberg, for whatever reason, is involved in the purchase.
Alex Rodriguez needs partners. Alex Rodriguez made like enough money to buy an NBA team during his baseball career.
How much? Hold on. How much cost? Sure, cost. Well, that wasn't what I was looking for. Currently valued at $3 billion. Alex Rodriguez net worth.
He really stumbled that money, huh?
He's worth $350 million.
His last contract with the Yankees was worth more, I'm pretty sure. Alex last contract with Yankees. 10-year, $275 million. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. So he probably has spent a lot of money.
That's fair.
Regardless,
that's still living nice. I can't. Anyway.
Yeah, but obviously that's not enough. That's not $3 billion. $3 billion is money. And
well, yeah, but when you sign 2 contracts worth $500 million, I guess I expected more.
Right, but so let's say hypothetically he earned $2 billion in his career.
Yeah.
Let's even say he earned $3 billion in his career. Right. It would be financially insanity to be like, all right, I'm spending all of it to buy a team.
I'm not saying. I'm saying I expected with everything like. So Alex Rodriguez started it in like 2001, like 1999 time. You'd expect the money he accumulated would also rise with inflation and all that. Wouldn't you? Like okay, Alex Rodriguez's last game was like in 2019. That's about 5 years ago. Would you not have expected the guy who made like 600 million in MLB contracts to have a substantial amount of money?
I mean, yeah, but like, I also expect him to spend a lot of that.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know what Alex Rodriguez does with his money, but I guess I expected more. I am disappointed. Oh well.
Interestingly, Jabari Parker has tweeted that he recovered his love for basketball. Good for him, I guess, but that ship has sailed a long time ago.
That's good.
Conference finals. Let's talk conference finals. Let's go ahead and Mavericks, Timberwolves. Hold
I
on,
mean,
gotta pull it up right
basically
now.
all of us called that series. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure all of us called the Mavericks.
I didn't think that it would be as one-sided as it was.
I
It
forgot
was a
what.
gentleman's
I
sweep.
don't
It
know what.
was,
I know I was really spicy at the end. I don't know if I said that they had no hope. The Timberwolves.
I mean,
I don't remember exactly what I said, but I said it was possible.
because they went down, was it 3-0 or 3-1?
3-0,
I
I'm pretty sure.
think it was 3-0. And then they won game 4.
Mm-hmm.
But it was over. Luka
Yeah.
just was too much. And that's not a slide on Kyrie Irving, because Kyrie Irving had a hell of a series. But
Yeah.
Luka just really elevated his game to the player we kind of think he's going to be, or we thought he's been this whole time. Timberwolves, I don't even know where to start with the Timberwolves. I guess we can start with the Draymond Green fiasco.
Was it not disappointing to watch? Because granted, Ant did good.
Ant did
I'm
good,
not saying. I'm not saying
and I
Ant
think
did
Cat did good. I think Cat had
But
a...
yeah, Cat did all right. Yeah, I'll give you Cat did good. But isn't it disappointing to see the team that eliminated the Denver Nuggets just
fall apart.
basically, yeah, like the
Yeah,
team that was shutting down the best offense we've ever seen had no answer for anyone on the Mavericks, and their role players could not get anything to score on the fucking Mavericks. Like,
right.
I'm not bashing them, but they weren't like a world beating team. We were talking about the Timberwolves like they were a top 5 defense of all time, and they had no answer, not just for Luka, for basically everyone.
Yeah, I mean, PJ Washington drops what? What was game 1? Hold on.
I'm pretty sure it was 33 or 35 or something ridiculous.
I think it was, but hold on, let me... Game 1. Oh, no. No, I was thinking of the last series where he dropped 29.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he averaged, like, 14 points per game for the series, so even then, like, it's PJ Washington. Like,
No, Luka was
there's no
dropping
answer.
30. I'm giving him extra. He was dropping 30 basically every game. He had like 4 or 5 other motherfuckers also in double digits every game, it felt like.
Yeah, and it was always, like, just crazy to watch because the Timberwolves, it felt like they never really could adjust. Because the moment you adjusted to whoever was going off that game, someone else was stepping up, and it reminded me of the Heat last year.
Yeah.
Where just you can't anticipate like Josh Green suddenly going off or Daniel fucking Gafford having a great game.
Right.
But you also, like, we know that Naz Reid is better than that performance. We know Mike Conley, he's up there, but he's better than that performance. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, we know he's better than 0 points in an elimination game. How much of this do you think...
Naz Reid's the best 6 man of the NBA.
Right. So how much of this do you think was the lights got a little too bright and it was their first playoff experience? Because I think that was the case with...
Ren. I've been saying this for now 2 series now, and you were like, no. Ant is him. Like,
No,
now you're just like, the lights got too bright. It wasn't too bright against the defending fucking
but
champion.
it's the Eastern Conference Finals or the Western Conference Finals. Well, we're going to talk about the Eastern. It's the same thing. When you have a young team I'm just saying I think it's fair that to an extent, not necessarily with Ant, because Ant he had 30 points, 9 rebounds.
Well, I'm not saying he did great.
I'm
Everyone
saying
else just kicked the bed, basically.
I'm saying those young role players, this was their first playoff experience. Right? This is their first real playoff experience. I'll say that. This isn't the first round eliminated in a sweep. This was the Western Conference Finals. How much? I'm just asking how much of that is it? Like 10%? Like because
it's more than 10%. Like there's a reason I wasn't picking the Thunder. It wasn't because the Thunder weren't a great fucking team. It's because that shit matters, especially in the playoffs. Because the playoffs, whether I know you love to say that the playoffs we put too much value on the playoffs. We don't appreciate the regular season stats enough and accolades enough. But the playoffs are a different atmosphere than the regular season.
It's a completely
It's
different game.
coached differently, and the games feel different because if you don't have a packed fucking stadium in the playoffs, then I don't know. You're the Utah Jazz. I don't know. Like,
Utah fans show out. They're actually a really passionate fan base.
that's fair.
Like
I was trying to figure out another one to Charlotte. Would Charlotte have been a good snipe? I don't know.
It's weird because Charlotte went through a phase when they lost the Pelicans.
Yeah, that's true.
And then when it came back as
They've lost enough.
Bobcats,
They didn't deserve the stray. Yeah, they didn't deserve the stray.
But it seems like they're getting back to normal now. So, I going forward, because we do this with every team that's eliminated. I don't know what I change about the Timberwolves. I think that I run it back. Obviously, you're going to have some moving pieces because I think Mike Conley's
the issue with the Timberwolves, and here's why I don't necessarily like where they are. Not because Ant isn't good, but Rudy Gobert's what 31, 32.
I feel like he's older than that.
He might be. He might be like 34, 35. But
He's
I think
31. He'll be 30. Okay, you were right.
Yeah, I was right.
He'll
be
32 at the start of next season.
Exactly. So
why does
he's
it feel
31.
like he's older?
He's 31, 32. He's making a max contract. Cat is like 25, 26, 27, maybe even. Is he
He's
not
28.
28? Wow. It feels like he just entered the league yesterday. Is he not also on a max deal?
I think he's on a supermax, which is completely warranted. 4-year, $221 million.
Yeah, and now you have Ant, who you're going to have to pay. Where the fuck are you getting the money to get the pieces around this team that you're going to need? Because as much as we like to compare the Lakers, the 2000s Lakers, to this Timberwolves team, Rudy Gobert is far from Shaq. Very far from Shaq.
Hold on, let me.
So, go ahead.
24, 25. So 24, 25, which is next season. The projected salary cap is 140. I don't think that's accurate. And the Timberwolves currently have tied up for next year $192 million.
Yeah.
So they're already
they have no hope.
Because Ant's contract kicks in. He goes from 13 mil, which is what he was earning this year, to 42 million next year. 42. And then Jaden McDaniels' extension kicks in. He was earning 3.9 this year. He earns 22.5 next year.
They have like 90% of their cap tied up in 4 players. So I guess I just don't see where the upside is. You just gotta hope that you draft and sign enough veteran pieces, and Ant, Cat, and Gobert makes it work. And quite honestly, I don't like that as a big three. That's just me personally. Me personally. But
okay. So I'll preface it by saying I think it worked better than everyone, including us, expected it to.
Yeah,
that's fair. I think that it worked a lot better. That said, I do agree with you. I think that Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns as a pair is a great pair. I don't know so much about the Rudy Gobert piece. And it's not that I don't think Rudy Gobert... That's the thing. Rudy Gobert on a better contract is a hell of a piece to have. Rudy Gobert making $46 million, not so much. Because he's an elite defender. He's one of the best defensive bigs in the NBA, and nobody will argue that. Defensive Player of the Year. The problem is, if you're going to make $46 million, I need more contributions on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
So I think that there's a world, and maybe they somehow get out from under that Rudy contract. I don't see how it's possible. I don't know who would be willing to take that on.
The problem is, after you get rid of that contract,
You're still over.
Well, not only are you still over, then you have to transition to figuring out, okay, what the fuck do we want to do now? And how do we accomplish that? What do we build around Cat and Ant that works? And that's the Timberwolves. I don't know. I just don't like the situation.
So that's the thing. Like, let's go down that hypothetical road, like a world without Gobert. Okay. Suddenly you have Naz Reid starting, or you move Karl Anthony Towns to center, and then you have Jaden McDaniels starting. Either of those situations, I'm okay with.
Yeah, fine.
If you're trading Gobert, you're getting a piece back because the salaries have to match. Let's assume that's a guard, because it's really what they need. That's a competitive team, because I don't like slotting Jaden McDaniels or Naz Reid into a more significant role is not a bad problem to have. My question is then, how does the defense take a hit? Because the way the Timberwolves were playing, at least in the games I watched, and I will be transparent, I only watched like 10 to 15 Timberwolves games this season. But to my eyes, they were playing a lot of funnel, where you would you would incentivize the attacking team to attack the rim and funnel them into Rudy Gobert, which is a great idea. The problem is we're in the era of the 3-point shooting generation, and you have to be able to defend the perimeter, and when you're running a funnel, you're not going to be able to. And that's kind of what we saw in that playoff series with the Mavs. I don't know. I think that a team built around Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony is a scary as hell team. I just don't know how you get out of the Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
No, I think that it is. It's just the extra pieces around it are hit and miss. You have to do it right, and sometimes that's not going to work. I'm saying that if you're telling me that you're building a team around those two, I'm all in. Like, I'm on board, because those two are that good. You just have to hope the pieces that you sign around them click with them.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because those two are that good. And again, I don't hate Rudy Gobert as a player. I think he's a fantastic player. I just don't think he's $46 million as a player, because he doesn't give you that much on the offensive side of the ball. Now, there are occasions, like in the last series, where he was hitting the fading mid-rangers, which is crazy. But I don't know. It's really tough because, like, obviously we're living in fantasy land where we're saying they're not going to have those 3 contracts next year. They're not getting out of that Rudy Gobert contract. Hell, he's accepting his player option on the year after. So we're at least having 2 more years of this Timberwolves big 3.
Sure.
I don't know how you build a team going forward with that kind of cap space. So they have to run it back.
Hope there's enough guys like Mike Conley who's willing to take the veteran minimum.
I mean, there's always going to be, but you were arguably one of the top teams, or not arguably, you were one of the top teams in the NBA this season. Yep. You run it back. You hope. Yeah. You run it back. You hope that, it was just a fluke. It was those playoff jitters that caused you to get eliminated in a gentleman's sweep in the Western Conference Finals. And you make another run. You hope Anthony Edwards takes that next step, because we saw flashes of it. And if he takes that next step, I'm fine with this team.
Playoff jitters are fine for like if you're the Pacers. Yeah, that's great. Sure. You have things to look forward to yesterday. When one of your stars is like 32 and taking up $46 million of your cap space, that's not your window is a lot shorter. You have to basically smash that window down and create a new one.
That's fair.
And that's the question. How did they get from where they are now to point B? I don't got the answer. I don't got it. So, yeah. Better than the teams has been in a long, long time though.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
so you take the good when you can get them. Would you rather watch what is arguably the best Timberwolves team you've ever seen if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves fan over the situation that's a headache and you might have to witness them lose continually in the second, maybe even third round? Yeah, I guess that comes with it.
I guess time will tell, but
Mhm.
let's talk about TNT's decision to have Draymond Green on the panel with Ernie, Chuck, Kenny, and Shaq.
Draymond Green's an entertaining dude, man.
He's
I gotta say.
entertaining, but
Sign that man to a WWE contract. I want to see it.
he was commentating constantly on Rudy Gobert, the man that he choked and got suspended for choking.
Yep.
Why in God's name did anyone think that was a good idea?
I don't
guess
think they thought it was a good idea. I think they thought it would be entertaining. And granted, they accomplished that end.
I guess because we're talking about it a week later, but
Yep.
I really, really am hoping there's not a post Draymond Green playing career where he is a TV analyst for one of the major national networks.
Oh, that's definitely happened. Quite
I mean,
honestly, you want me to get like 40 chess with this? I have a feeling that he's hoping that he's going to have a Pat McAfee similar arc where he will transition this to a show, and that show hopefully becomes successful enough that it's bought by a major network, maybe Fox Sports even, as they get more desperate to fill content, and you go from there.
I don't know. Because, I don't remember if it was during the segment where he was with the panel or if it was on his podcast afterwards. But he went on this whole rant and rave about fines in the NBA and how detrimental they are to players because
Oh my god.
the NBA, it was basically like he was complaining about his fines. Where he was basically saying the NBA doesn't prepare these young men for all this money and how to handle it and blah blah blah. Which that would be fair if not for the fact that the NBA offers free financial counseling for players and they don't take it because they think they know best, and then they end up doing the whole Delonte West and spending it all and then not being able to sustain their lifestyle and spiraling because they don't take the advice of other people because they think that money is infinite.
Yep. And then people who know that get to talk on TNT about how it's not like that. Full
Regardless,
circle.
I think it was a terrible idea, and I get that it was entertaining, but
it was very entertaining.
Have someone else. Just because it shouldn't have been Draymond because it was the Timberwolves. If Draymond was on the Pacers, Celtics, I would have been okay with it. But he's clearly biased against the Timberwolves because of that whole ordeal with Rudy earlier in the year.
Yep.
Speaking of that, segues. They're great. Pacers, Celtics. Celtics ended up sweeping the
basically
Pacers.
the way I said it. Happened basically the way I said it. So.
Now, I will say The games were a lot closer than I think we thought they were going to be, because 3 of them came down to a last shot.
I didn't. Did what's to say? Did Kristaps even suit up for a game?
No.
That's
No.
what I thought. So
But
closer than you thought when the rim protector of the main rim protector of the other team didn't even play in the series.
right, but the Pacers
mean-
the Pacers didn't stay in those games because of defense or because of rim running. They stayed in those games with their shooting. I'm not saying that like that's fair. I'm just saying injuries are a part of the game. You can only play the team in front of you. And the Celtics are currently the best team in basketball. We'll see what happens starting tonight. If the Mavericks can overcome that. But I'm just saying, a couple shots one way or the other, and suddenly the Pacers were up 3-1. Right? Like, I'm going based off of, because I'm trying to be impartial, I'm going off of what I've seen from Celtics fans, because in the Bucks series and the New York series, there was a lot of vitriol from those fan bases about how the Pacers would have been destroyed if they were healthy and blah, 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 blah. And
I
then
don't know
the
about
Celtics...
destroyed, but I'm going to tell you this right now. I do not think the Pacers make it past the first round against fully healthy teams.
That's tough. We'll talk about that in a second. And I'll explain why. Because I'm talking about this series first. And then we'll talk about the Pacers as like moving forward, and that will include that. Because Celtics fans acknowledged calls go a certain way, because there were some calls that in the last 2 minutes report were called falsely.
Oh no, yeah, the fix was in, dude.
I don't think the fix was in. I don't think the fix was in.
Dude.
No, because there are things like out of bounds where it looks like, if you were just watching it at full speed, it looks like it's out on Neesmith, but White touched it at the last second, and you don't see that unless you watch super slow-mo, but we can't slow down every play. Like, I get it. I'm just saying, like, to be in that game, 3 of the 4 games, dice fall a different way, and suddenly the Pacers are up 3-1 and somehow end up in the finals, which would have been insanity. I'm just saying that if I'm the Pacers, I'm not hanging my head on that. I think that it was a great season. No one expected you to be there. But looking at those previous series, so the weird thing is, if the Bucks were fully healthy, okay, I fully believe the Pacers match. And Bucks are a better team. I'm gonna preface this by saying the Bucks are better than the Pacers. Okay, we're understanding that the Bucks are a better basketball team than the Indiana Pacers. Okay, everyone following? The Pacers match up so well against a healthy Bucks just because of their inside presence. Because what happened in the regular season, and I get the regular season is different from the playoffs, they basically just let Giannis rim run, and then they beat them at the 3-point line. Because Giannis is a lot of things. Giannis is not a shooter. They were basically letting him do whatever he wanted. He was dropping 40, 50, and they were losing because the Pacers just outshot everyone else. It was focused on defend the perimeter, let them have whatever they want inside. Again, Bucks are hands down the best team, but I still think the Pacers have a decent shot at winning that first round series against a healthy Bucks. Healthy Knicks, that's tough. I think that those teams are a lot closer. I think Jalen Brunson still is the best player on the floor in either of those. Like, in any situation where the Pacers and Knicks are healthy, because again, the Pacers were not fully healthy, I still think Jalen Brunson is the best player.
Yeah.
The surrounding pieces, I think the Pacers have a better depth than the New York Knicks, even when the Knicks are fully healthy, because, again, regular season doesn't matter, but the Pacers bench led the league in field goal percentage, points per game, and were third in assists per game.
In another situation like the Timberwolves, where they have a really good piece in a way to figure out how to make that piece go.
So,
Like,
and then I also think because again in that last game, obviously the Celtics were not playing at full strength or full throttle because Tyrese Halliburton was out for those last two games. Andrew Nemhard, heroic performance in Game 4, but again, it doesn't really matter because I think it does matter for the future, but it doesn't matter right now.
right.
So going forward for the Pacers, I don't necessarily think you need some world-changing thing. You have so many young, talented players on this team. Tyrese Halliburton, chief among them, is a superstar player. He's on the right side of 25. He's going to keep developing. Andrew Nemhard, we saw, like, granted, he was an older draft pick. He's turning 25 this year. But we saw in an elimination game in the Eastern Conference Final, he could rise to the moment. So you like that piece going forward. Aaron Nesmith, I think, exceeded expectations. I know that everyone that's followed him through his college career and while he was on the Celtics wanted to see him in a bigger role, and he did get that with the Pacers, and I do think he has exceeded the expectations of most people. Benedict Mathurin didn't play half the season, didn't play in the playoffs. Isaiah Jackson finally learned that you can play defense without trying to swat everything into the fifth row and fouling out 3 minutes into your playing time. And Miles Turner became the idea of Miles Turner. So I don't necessarily think this Pacers team needs to make a massive change, at least not yet. I think the big focus this offseason is bringing back Pascal Siakam because you paid a lot to get him. Getting healthy because Tyrese Halliburton was not healthy towards the end of the season going into the playoffs. Benedict Mathurin had the torn labrum. You get healthy. You run it back at least until the trade deadline, and then you look to make a move. The issue is when you're a young team, the assets you have, because you're in a problem. You're a young team, but you're also a playoff team. So your picks are not as valuable as they should be, and your assets are too important. And you don't want to be in a situation where you're the Lakers fans of 3 years ago, where you're trying to trade Talen Horton-Tucker in a second for a superstar player. Obviously, players.
Am I crazy to think that I don't think the Pacers necessarily need to trade for another superstar?
No, I absolutely don't think they do, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. Because if you're trading for a superstar or a star player, like one of the rumors out there is Mikal Bridges, and I love Mikal Bridges as a player.
That's a nice fit, especially with Pascal. That's a lot of
it's a perfect fit,
quite honestly.
However, we know that the Nets, granted he was a 2-year rental at that time, turned down 3 first-round picks and a roster player from the Houston Rockets.
Yep.
So if you're the Pacers, you're looking at trading at least one of Nemhard, Mathurin, or Jarris Walker, plus picks on top of that, plus probably another roster player for a rental of Mikal Bridges. I don't know if I pull that trigger.
Be like like I said, I think the Nets are probably looking for 2 or 3 picks and maybe even 2 or 3 pick swaps and a player or two, a young player or two.
Right, and I agree with that. I think it depends on the player, because I think if I'm like using the Pacers as an example, if you're asking for Mathurin, I'm considering it because Mikal Bridges is the player you hope Mathurin becomes. But once you start adding to that is when I question it. Andrew Nemhard, I think, is too valuable to the Pacers because he can fill 2 roles. If you bring in another starter, he goes to the bench. You have the best backup point guard in the league. But he's also a quality defender, and you were comfortable running him in the 2-guard spot in your starting lineup. Jarris Walker has oodles of potential, but I don't think Jarris Walker by himself gets it done, and you have to then include one of Mathurin or Nemhard.
Yep.
And I'm not comfortable including 2 players when I'm including one of them. And I agree with you. I don't think that gets it done. So I don't think the move is to try to trade for another star player, because the assets it would require would be too much. Now, that's not to say I don't look at the trade deadline. I'm saying in the offseason, like, absolutely, I don't think a trade is necessary. I think you run it back, see how the team's doing at the trade deadline, and then look at who's selling. And then you try to get in on those as maybe even where you're trying to be a cap dump space for an upset star player that's aging that you can get for a couple picks. Because realistically, the Pacers, with the exception of Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, and TJ McConnell, are an incredibly good team, and they're getting better. So run it back, see what you got next season. You got anything else on the Pacers?
No, I generally agree with that.
All right, then. Time to move on to the NBA Finals, which, again, tip off tonight. Let's go ahead, because we have Austin's predictions. Let's go ahead and get his in here, and then you and I will talk, because we only have his. He did bitch out and give 2 answers.
You know what? No, the second answer doesn't count. His first answer.
Oh, okay. So he says
Second
Mavs
answer
in
doesn't count.
6 with Luka as the MVP.
Yep.
I
think that's a good prediction.
I think that's a very good prediction. I think if the Mavs are going to win this series, because I do think that on paper, and again, the games are not played on paper, but I think on paper the Celtics are the better team.
I agree with that.
So for the Mavericks to win on paper, Luka Doncic is going to have to be the MVP. Now, before we get into like really discussing it, I wanted to go over ESPN. So ESPN has predicted, or they've made predictions for every series of the playoffs. On this, their panel, which was Kendra Andrews, Jerry Bembry, Tim Bontemps, Jamal Collier, Israel Gutierrez, Chris Herring, Tim Legler, Andrew Lopez, Zach Lowe, Bobby Marks, Dave McMenamin, Kevin Pelton, Omar Raja, Ramona Shelburne, Andre Snellings, Mark J. Spears, and Alm Young Misuk. Out of that panel, 9 picked the Mavs and 8 went Celtics. So it's basically a 50-50 split, as close to 50-50 as you can get when you've got 17 people. Which I think that's interesting, because in most of the other series, it was clearly defined who they were picking. Like in the Bucks Pacers, I only know those 2 series. Bucks Pacers, everyone picked the Bucks. Knicks Pacers, everyone picked the Knicks. So to have them split is interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and start with your prediction. Who do you think is winning this series?
I think it's the Celtics.
Interesting. How many games?
I almost want to be a mad lad.
You're gonna say 4?
I was gonna say 5.
5?
Yeah. You know what? Fuck it. Celtics in 5.
Celtics in 5. MVP.
Tatum.
I'm gonna say Mavericks in 7. With Kyrie as the MVP.
That's probably a better.
I think so. So I did just say that I think for the Mavs to win this series, Luka has to have an MVP performance, right? So why am I saying Kyrie for MVP? I think it's because like this is going to be Kyrie is a weird dude, right? Everyone who, if you follow basketball in any iota of understanding, you know Kyrie Irving is a weird dude. He just signed with Anta as a signature athlete because he got kicked off Nike for things that he said. Google it. I'm not talking about it on here. He's a weird dude, but he takes things very, 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 very personally. And he's not exactly a big fan of the Celtics organization. So I think we're going to see Kyrie elevate his game,
Very
or at least
possible.
try to a way we've never seen. And if he succeeds in that, I think that the Mavericks will win the series. I think the NBA wants this to go to 7 because a lot of the earlier rounds were shorter series. And you have teams in the finals that you don't typically have, and it feels like viewership has been down in general. So I think the NBA is going to want this to go to 7, and we're going to have that, not necessarily rigging. I don't like calling it rigging, but influenced games to get it to 7. So it could end in 6, it could end in 5, because you can overcome influence. You can't overcome rigging. That's the difference. Because I think that's what the Pacers Celtics series was. It was influence to get it over quickly. But it wasn't rigged because the Pacers would not have been able, like, they hit 1 or 2 shots and they win the series. I do think Luka has a hell of a series. I think Jason Tatum has a hell of a series. I have a weird feeling that the role players aren't going to be as relevant as they have been in recent series or recent years of NBA Finals.
I generally agree with that because I think the Celtics role players have a higher ceiling.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious to see if the Timberwolves collapsed or if something clicked with the Mavericks role players, because if they're playing like they played in the last series, that's a hell lot closer.
Yeah.
That's a lot closer than it. And that's kind of my logic is multiple fronts. One, the role players for the Celtics are better. The Celtics also have 2 stars who can keep up with the scoring. And
now,
good.
The interesting thing for me, like when I'm looking, like when you look at these rosters on paper, and I'm specifically looking at the Mavericks right now, is you have 2 guys who, no matter how you guard them, they always seem to make a play. Right? That's hard to game plan for. Because you double team Luka, he falls to the floor, he's still going to get a half court alley-oop lob off. You triple team Kyrie, he's somehow going to squeak through and throw up some ridiculous circus shot that you saw at a playground 20 years ago. And he's going to hit it. Like, the Mavericks just have 2 guys that basically have a will to win, and no matter what it seems they do, it works.
Yep.
That's what I think is going to be hard for the Celtics to overcome, because the Celtics have elite defenders, but a lot of teams have had elite defenders, and no matter what you do, Luka somehow embarrasses you. And
so I think of the teams they've played, granted Kyrie, well, I mean, they got Drew for Kyrie. I think of the teams that they've played, this is the best defensive matchup that they've seen.
hands down.
You can put Tatum or Brown on Luka, and I'm not saying they're going to shut down Luka. I'm saying they're going to make it harder for Luka than it's been in any of the series he's played in.
Which is weird because, like, when you compare the paths to the finals, the Mavs have had a harder trek to the finals than the Celtics did. The Celtics kind of had a cakewalk to the finals.
Oh, 100%.
And that's kind of why I'm hesitant.
Kind of the thing. Also, Kyrie is this isn't Kyrie's first rodeo, but most, and Washington's either, PJ Washington's either, but most of the players on the Mavericks, this is Luka's first finals. This is obviously Lively's first finals. This is a lot of the players we have gotten to know step up first finals. The Celtics have been here before. The Celtics faced the fucking Warriors.
Right.
If the Celtics lose this series,
they blow it up. They have to.
Like, what do you do?
They have to. And I don't necessarily think blowing it up means trading Brown and Tatum. It might, it might mean trading one of them, but I think you have to kind of back up and look at everything and see what's working and what's not. Because at this point, if you do not win this year, it's no longer a losing streak, it's an embarrassment.
It is. I'm struggling to think of the player who doesn't have at least some kind of playoff experience. Drew Holiday has won a championship. Tatum and Brown played in the finals against the Warriors. Derek White played against the finals against the Warriors. Kristaps? That's their least experienced dude. And that's more because he's been injured.
I just feel like the Celtics have more pressure on them.
You gotta rise to that though. Like,
on the flip side, so let's say, let's just again devil's advocate here. Let's say the Mavericks win this series, and it doesn't even have to be convincingly. Let's say they win in 6. All right.
sure.
Luka wins MVP, because we had this conversation the other day. Luka could retire right now, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And you disagree with that, but I have to stress that it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. It is not the NBA Hall of Fame, and the man has a
stuff
whole.
He did overseas counts. Yeah, I get it.
Like, he's absolutely a Hall of Famer.
Yep. Go ahead.
If they win the finals, Luka wins Finals MVP. What does that do for him as a player in terms of the face of the league? Does it move the needle? Does he suddenly rise to that? Because
again, you don't want to listen to me when I tell you this. He wins this game. We were talking about Ant being the best player in the NBA. What did I say after the Mavericks made short work of them?
Prove it or something like that?
No, I said the next thing that's going to happen is Luka's going to be talked about as the best player in the NBA. If Luka wins this series, Luka is the best player in the NBA. Not you can say that's wrong. You can absolutely disagree with that. But to the mass media, starting the day the Celtics go down, is Luka Doncic the best player in the NBA? First segment on ESPN. Book it. And then that'll just spread, and that'll be more common knowledge. We'd be like, oh, is it Jokic? Is it Luka? Is it Jokic? Is it Luka? Then that'll be for basically the whole next year. So, yes, if Luka wins this series, he's probably the best player of the NBA, and it probably becomes consensus sometime around midway next season.
So even if he does not, so if Kyrie wins Finals MVP, you still think that's the headline the day after?
Yes.
Interesting.
He would have to be embarrassing.
I don't disagree.
It would have to be. There isn't even a debate if Luka or Kyrie deserved it and Kyrie won. It would have to be something like that. If you can debate Luka deserved that Finals MVP, yes.
So let's back up. Let's ask an interesting question here. Which player in this NBA Finals do you think would benefit the most from winning? And I do think it's Kyrie. Because
in what sense?
Benefit as legacy, I guess. Because Luka, Tatum, and Brown are all young. They're going to have plenty of runs. If Kyrie wins, that's the validation because it's the one without LeBron.
It's the one without LeBron. I agree with that. But that's a legacy kind of thing.
And yeah, no, I'm just asking specifically that question. Which player's legacy do you think winning this impacts? Because Tatum, Brown,
the obvious answer is Kyrie.
Well, Tatum, Brown, and Luka, to be fair, this would be their first one. And if they never win
but
one...
Here's the thing. I still think it's Luka for this reason only. If you secure that championship early, not only are you debated the best player in the NBA, you start having the discussions of you're gonna really hate me for saying this.
Top 10.
No. They're gonna be debating is Luka Doncic the best Maverick of all time? That as well.
Oh yeah, but I feel like he's already in that discussion, even if not at the top of the list. I think that it's very easy to justify putting him in that discussion.
Exactly.
Like already, I don't think that has like any bearing on whether or not he
But here's
wins. I
the
think
thing:
if he wins,
if he doesn't win the chip, I don't think he has the argument though, because
I think it would depend on who you're talking to.
Nowitzki will always have that over them. But I think when he gets that win out the way, that instantly makes his case, no matter where he is in his career.
That's fair. I feel like Tatum and Brown, on the flip side, if they don't win it here, that's a huge stain.
Because here's the thing: I get you think that's validation. If Kyrie doesn't win this, he still has an NBA Finals, even if it's
Right.
with LeBron. He's
Right.
still regarded as one of, if not,
Was he a top 75?
Huh?
Was Kyrie on top 75?
No idea. That's not where I was going with that. He's still regarded as one of, if not the best dribbler of all time. He like you can say he's going to have a similar legacy to AI, except he has a championship, so he's going to be looked at
Kyrie,
as better.
just
Like
piggybacking off what we were talking about earlier, Kyrie was originally on the NBA 75, but was removed for controversial statements. Google it. It's
I don't
it's
need
a.
to Google it.
I'm not telling you. I'm telling people at
100%
home. I'm telling people at home that they might not have been following the NBA sphere outside
Do you
of
think Kyrie
games.
has the hardest path to the Hall of Fame just because I think that a lot of people in the league probably don't want to see?
I don't. That's tough because I feel like the Basketball Hall of Fame, more so than
understand.
any other
Not
sport,
the
is
NBA Hall
more.
of Fame.
Well, yeah. I'm saying specifically. I think the Basketball Hall of Fame compared to other sports is more about the individual than the accolades because, like, hold on, let me. Sorry, my phone would not stop going off, and I'm trying to silence it, and it won't stop. So Chuck Cooper, for example, he's in the Hall of Fame. He played 409 games. He averaged 6.7 points. But he was the first African American drafted to the NBA. So, like, you can get into the NBA Hall of Fame for reasons besides just winning a bunch of rings. And I don't necessarily think that controversial off the court issues would necessarily prohibit him from making the NBA because
It's a tough call. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, does he not have the hardest path just based on the stupid shit he has done?
So
Like,
here's the thing: Karl Malone's in the Hall of Fame. That's kind of what I'm saying.
but did they not put him in before they knew though? That's the thing.
That I would have to look at.
I'm 90% sure they did. And that's kind of the thing. They already know
So,
who
like,
Kyrie is.
we were talking about it.
But I also don't think like what Kyrie has done is anywhere near as bad as what
No, it's absolutely not. Like, I don't
it's not.
care. Like,
No, please
I've
don't take that. Please don't
no,
take that as
no. I get what you're saying. I vehemently disagree with Kyrie Irving on every statement he's ever made about those things. But nothing he said compares to what Karl Malone did. We respect the basketball player that is Karl Malone. We do not respect the person that is Karl Malone. I think that's a fair statement, and I think that's kind of what the Hall has said about Karl Malone. Because, like, shitty person, absolutely god-awful person, great basketball player. And we can see both of those. Like, no matter what Kyrie has said, and that's kind of what I'm getting at with the Hall in terms of the Basketball Hall of Fame, is Kyrie has said some absolutely terrible things. He said some inaccurate things. He said some questionable things. But Kyrie Irving is also a very good basketball player, and the Basketball Hall of Fame doesn't necessarily care about Kyrie Irving, the person. They care about Kyrie Irving, the basketball player. Do I think he has a harder path to the Hall than, like, Kevin Durant? Yeah. But I don't think it's necessarily because of his statements. I think that the Basketball Hall of Fame has done a very good job of differentiating person from player. And maybe they shouldn't. Like, maybe you should look at the person and I don't know. But we were having that conversation the other day because I said that when Paul George retires, he very likely will be a borderline Hall of Fame player just because of his career accolades. And I think the NBA Hall of Fame is just in general, it's pretty lenient when it comes to like who it lets into the Hall. Are you there, or did you disconnect? Because you haven't said anything in like
Broke
2
up
minutes.
for you. It broke up for you. What happened?
Oh, it broke up. So basically what I was saying is I think the Hall of Fame is very good at differentiating the player from the person.
Okay. Okay, that's a fair assessment.
Like, should they is a legitimate question, but
That is.
I don't think that...
But then again, do
like-
you want to be the Baseball Hall of Fame where you're barring arguably the best player in your sport because of performance-enhancing drugs? And
Right,
granted, that's not something Kyrie's done, but...
Right. And that's kind of the thing is like, at what point do we draw that line? I don't think having a personal belief, regardless of if it's accurate or not, on vaccinations, for example, changes the fact that Kyrie is and was a very, very good basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other stuff that he said, questionable. But even then, it doesn't change the fact that he's a very good basketball player. Now, there are limits. Like, if a player killed someone, obviously, I don't care how good of a basketball player they are, don't put them in the Hall of Fame. But personal opinions, I don't think that personal opinions without action should stop someone from getting into the Hall of Fame, because at that point you're kind of doing draconian censorship, and that's a little weird for me. Again, completely disagree with Kyrie Irving on like every opinion he has, but they're his opinions. He's allowed to have them, and I don't think that should have in any way an impact on his ability to get into
and
the
here's
Hall.
kind of here's another debate we can have. Do you think that because of how inclusive the Basketball Hall of Fame is, does that kind of make it less of an accomplishment?
Yes and no. Because you have to realize, like, you and I disagree on like the idea of awards.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, what matters is your ability to put the ball in the hoop or contribute to your team putting the ball in the hoop, and your ability to contribute to stopping the other team putting the ball in the hoop. And I don't care about anything else. Like, that is basketball to me. At the fundamental level, like, that is what matters. And if you're very, 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 very good at one or both of those things, I don't care if you've never won a ring, you're good at basketball. Because basketball is a team sport, and like, hypothetically, let's say a player averaged 50 and 10 for a season and they didn't make the playoffs because the rest of their team like didn't know which direction to run. Are we going to say that player's not good at basketball because they didn't win? No, that's preposterous. Like, they very clearly are good at basketball.
The thing, though, here's kind of the thing. The players who are quote unquote really, really, really good at basketball, they win championships. Whether
I
you want
agree.
to
I agree.
And if you don't, if let's say you had LeBron James and Michael Jordan played in the same era, if LeBron didn't win any titles, he would be multiple tiers below Michael Jordan because he didn't win, even if he performed similar.
But
that's just the harsh reality of it.
No, I
have
totally get that. I totally get that, and I'm not disagreeing with that on a fundamental level. What I'm saying is, if LeBron James today, all right, you take LeBron James, well, not today, you take LeBron James in his prime, okay? Right? Are you following?
Yep.
I'm just making sure I'm not cutting out again. And you take Michael Jordan in his prime, correct?
Yep, totally.
These are two phenomenal basketball players. They're the best on the planet when they're alive, right?
Yes.
Or when they're when they're alive, like one
When
of
they're
us said.
alive, yeah.
No, when they're
they're in their
playing, they're
prime.
the best on the planet. Okay, now put them
Yeah.
together. Only one of them can win. Does that suddenly mean the other one's not as good as he is? No, it doesn't. And that's kind of what I'm
It
saying.
means he's
That's
looked as not as good though. That's kind of the thing.
but by who? Because like when I look at it, I'm looking at it as holy crap, that's an incredible basketball player.
That puts Scottie Pippen in your top 15 arguments.
Hmm?
Then put Scottie Pippen in like your top 10 NBA players arguments.
But why would I? He won a lot, but he shouldn't be in the top 15.
But he played good. Did he
He
not?
didn't play top
He played
15. He did
he
not play
played
top
better
15.
he played better defense than the best player in the NBA apparently. Right? He was put on
But he did not
he was
play
put
top
on Magic
15.
Johnson in that final.
But by your logic, he should be in that top 15 because he won a lot.
No, because that's not all that matters.
So you understand it's a give and take, but the thing that
Sometimes.
matters the most is the ability of the player, not the jewelry. The jewelry is tertiary.
Sometimes, yes.
It's important, but it's not the story.
The jewelry is required.
I don't think the jewelry is required.
It
Like,
is 100% required.
so, top 3 point guards of all time, go. And you know, top five, because I think the top 3.
I'm about to say the top 3 all won: Magic Johnson, Steph Curry. But here's the thing: I honestly couldn't even give you my top 5
Top
off the
5.
top of my head.
So it would. I mean, the
after
top
Steph
3.
Curry and Magic Johnson, it doesn't matter to me.
Oscar
quite
Robertson.
honestly.
No, Oscar
Doesn't
Robertson
matter.
is in there.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
And then John Stockton and Chris Paul.
I don't know if I could say that.
Like,
oh,
that's tough. I think that's.
Here's the thing: Luka wins the ring this year. Is he in the discussion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. He's
But I don't think he's in the discussion because I feel like regardless of the outcome, I feel like he's on the fringe of that discussion anyway. And that's what I'm saying is like the jewelry is tertiary. Like it adds to the career. It's not the career. Because
it's the validation of the career.
But
that's kind of the thing. The reason that you put John Stockton and Chris Paul there is because they have a lot of assists and there isn't better candidates for you to go off of.
I'll break it down smaller, okay? If Ray Allen does not win a ring, is he still not prior to Steph Curry? Okay, so before Steph Curry.
Yeah. Now you have to go find someone.
No, because that's the point. But I can go with Steph Curry then. If Steph Curry does not win a ring, is he not still the greatest shooter of all time statistically?
He can be the argument for the greatest shooter of all time and the greatest players of all time are two different arguments.
But it's all tied together. But it's all tied together. Because that is his ability as a basketball player. Whether he wins or not, he's good at that. And that's kind of my point. Because you can be a fantastic basketball player, but be in a shitty situation in terms of team comp. I just we have this argument way too much on this channel. Like,
my manager had a saying that said something like, "What was it exactly? I don't know the exact phrase. You have to draw a line somewhere," and that's kind of like my argument with this whole thing. You have to draw the line somewhere. Is it shitty? Sometimes can you disagree with the logic? Yes, but the line has to get drawn somewhere.
I feel like I'm not saying that the rings and the wins are not important. I'm just saying I think that the actual ability of the players is more important than the team accolade, because that's what a championship is. It's a team accolade. The individual player's skill set is the individual player's skill set. I can control what I do. I can't control what you do. So when you're looking at an individual player,
but here's the thing. That's kind of what we give Michael Jordan credit for. So once again,
he also averaged 35.
I understand this, but what's one of the things that a lot of old heads, and I can't believe
The rings. The ring count.
Like, yes, well, not only the ring count, he could will anyone to win. He had the heart of a killer. Like, he could have taken a bunch of scrubs to an NBA Finals.
Yeah.
So yes, he is given credit for changing the mentality of the people around him. So no, you can't just say,
Right.
"Oh, I can
Right.
only control it."
Right.
You are expected to. You
Right.
are
Right.
absolutely expected to if you are the top guy in that organization and one of the top players in the NBA. Whether that's fair or not, you can debate that. But that is absolutely the expectation. The expectation isn't, "Oh, I can only control what I do. I'm average." You got to get those guys involved too. You got to get those
Right.
guys.
But Michael Jordan averaged 37.1 points per game, Angelo.
I understand that, and he was getting credit for getting everyone else also in the same mindset. So yes, he controlled
Right.
what he
Right,
did,
right,
but he
right, right,
also
right, right,
controlled
right,
what his
right,
other players
right,
did.
right,
It's
right,
not.
right.
So that's why I'm disagreeing with what you're saying.
But
It's not like that.
right,
It is absolutely not like
right,
that.
right. But Michael Jordan played 82 games that season. Okay, he played 82 games. He played the entire freaking season. He averaged 37.1 points per game. If he does not win the ring that season, which I don't, they did not win that season. It doesn't change the fact that he averaged 37 points per game that season. Are we going to say that that's not the best player on the planet because he did not win the ring that year? He averaged 37 points per game over
So here's
82
the thing:
games.
you seem to like hyper focus on he needs to win a ring in that individual year. The winning the ring in an individual year at the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. It's if you do it at all. That's kind of why we're at the precipice with Tatum. Because it's like, okay, you've had the best team or on paper in the NBA for what? 3 of the last 4 years. You have an NBA finals to show for it, and you lost to the Golden State Warriors, who you, by the way, you were low key favored against because you had more firepower than them. They just had Steph Curry.
Right, but my point is,
So like
if Michael Jordan,
but here's the thing, you chose to draw the line here. This year against this team, the Dallas Mavericks, is where you draw the line where okay, this is unacceptable. You need to have that ring. Even you were saying it, you just don't want to acknowledge that is absolutely the case.
so Michael Jordan played 15 years in the NBA. This is what I'm trying to make as a point. Okay? In 15 years in the NBA, he averaged less than 35 times. I want you to. We're going to a vacuum, okay? You're because you're going to say, "Oh, he did win the ring." I'm asking you in a vacuum. If Michael Jordan never wins a ring, averaging less than 35 times in a 15-year career, are you going to say he's not a great basketball player?
I'm not going to say he's not a great basketball player,
That's my point.
but I'm not
The
going to say he's
rings.
one of the best basketball players ever.
That would be crazy. That would be
You
absolutely
can
crazy
say
to
it's
me.
crazy, but if Michael Jordan did that and didn't have a single ring, because how how unlucky can you be to do that and not win a ring?
So,
That's kind of
so let me
that's you can't. You
we're
physically
gonna
can't.
we're gonna take it to our outside podcast here for a minute, okay? Do you remember when we first started playing NHL together?
Yep.
Do you remember that like everyone on our 6-man team, because we were playing sixes at that time, with the
Mhm.
exception of me and Brandon, had never played NHL before?
Absolutely.
Do you remember how I was scoring like 12 points every game and nobody else scored ever and we lost every freaking game?
Yep. 82 straight, baby.
Right, right, right.
Oh, and 82.
I was doing everything I could to win, but because of you dipshits, we lost 82 straight.
Right, but
But what
playing
did but
with
but
people, you aren't going to play with people in the NBA who's never played
right, but what I'm saying is
basketball before.
but what I'm saying is like why do we if Michael Jordan averages what he averaged for his career and never wins a ring, he's still one of the, if not the greatest players of all time. regardless of the ring. That's what I'm saying. We are so hyper-focused on the jewelry, we're ignoring the player. And I'm not saying the jewelry is not important, because it is. I'm saying it is on top of the player. It is not the defining moment of the player. Like, regardless of whether he wins the ring or not, he's still one of the best players of all time. The ring is on top of that career. He averaged 30 points in all but 5 seasons of a 15-year career. 33% of his career was spent at less than 30 points per game. And it's not like they were far below. It was 29.6, 28.7, 26.9, 28.2. Like, these weren't, like, far below. The ring is nice, but it doesn't change how good he is at putting the ball in the hoop, which is all that matters when you're defining skill. When you're defining legacy, sure, I guess. But when you're talking purely skill, the only thing that matters is your ability to put the ball in the hoop or your ability to stop the other team from putting the ball in the hoop. That's all that matters. And I think that's where our disconnect is you're more focused on legacy when we're talking about player talent. Because absolutely that ring matters for legacy. 100%. I will fully get behind that. But in terms of categorizing a player's ability, yeah, it matters, but it's not
But
the
that's
most important thing.
But that's what I'm saying. You can acknowledge someone's a great player, but that they don't have the accolades to be considered
But
top
when the
X.
accolades are tied to team success, let's say a player, hypothetically, let's say a player wins, he plays 15 seasons, he wins 12 straight MVPs and never wins a ring. Are you really going to say, oh, that'd be crazy?
Yeah, I would.
That's crazy.
You wouldn't win that many MVPs if you never won, quite honestly with you.
No, probably not.
Like, let's be real. Eventually they'd be like,
no,
we're just gonna give up on-
I'm saying for the sense of a thought experiment.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It would be crazy to say, no, he's not one of the greatest of all time. He's the MVP 12 of his 15 years. That's insane. That would be an insane take to say, no, he's not one of the greatest players of all time because he never won a ring. I don't know. Remember when we said earlier we weren't going to go off on tangents?
I mean, we acknowledge that was going to happen. So
Yeah, no, we acknowledged that we would try, but it wouldn't happen.
yeah.
What would be your dark horse MVP for the finals?
Assuming still Celtics?
Assuming either team. Like, who would be an outlier? Not Brown, Tatum,
Luka Kyrie.
Kyrie. Kristaps would be your dark horse.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be Daniel Gafford.
Oh no.
Or you know what?
Oh no.
You know what? Al Horford. You know what? Absolutely, I would love to see that actually.
That would be a hell of a. Whew.
Actually, yeah, no, I want it to be Al Horford. I'm changing my prediction just so I can will it into existence.
If you say so.
You got anything else?
I have nothing else.
All right. Hey, guys, if you like what we do here, follow us on whatever podcatcher you're listening to us on. Follow us on all socials at No Reserves. Alex has been doing a hell of a job on
Phenomenal.
X. Phenomenal. We will be back on Sunday for a regularly scheduled episode. Like I said, we just wanted to get one out before the finals, and schedule conflicts prohibited us from getting one out on Sunday, but this was closer anyway at work. And then Angelo had some issues this week, so he missed the football podcast, correct? Which was supposed to be out today.
It was
supposed to be out today. So instead you're getting No Reserves basketball with Rehn and Angelo because Austin is in North Dakota. We'll be back on Sunday, and then Angelo will be back next Thursday, correct?
Yep.
With No Reserves football. Alex will be tweeting up a storm, so follow us over there and on all socials. And You know what? Look, if you're listening to us this long, you either fell asleep and you're dreaming while we're talking, which good for you. But if you're
Doesn't happen to Ren very
if you're listening to us this long and you have not subscribed or followed the podcast on whatever platform, just do it. Just do it. You'll feel better. That's all I got. If Angelo doesn't have anything, we will see you all on Sunday. Have a great NBA first finals game. I don't know what I was saying there. That sounded weird. It sounded fine in my head. That's the second time this episode I've done it. And we will see you on Sunday. Love you. Bye.
Ren, you're bad.